Hi, Michael Clark.
Hello. How are you going to keep this up for 24 hours?
It's only just
We'll see. We'll see. As somebody who saw your beginnings, because I live in London and kind of follow them, I'm very surprised by your current involvement in classicism. You're doing 2 Stravinsky programs in the Barbican.
Yeah.
And I would like to know how that works. Somebody who in the beginning of his career was able to create a continuity between the street and the stage.
Yeah.
And who's now, and I'm not in any way objecting to it. I'm just interested in how that works for you.
Yeah, it's a very different sort of dialogue very often there is that relationship between dance and music. There's a dialogue going on between the two of them. With a lot of music that I've used in the past, it's been more, the music's been more simple, maybe deceptively simple, more complex, maybe with the lyrics, for example, from Mark Smith and The Fall. But with Stravinsky, obviously there's a complexity that's, it allows for a different kind of dialogue, really, one that can be, it's not, I work with music in lots of different ways, but it's a different sort of sophistication, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not only the music, because obviously if you work with Stravinsky, you're also competing with Balanchine and basically engaging the whole history of ballet in the 20th century.
Maybe not to many people here, but certainly from my perspective, part of doing that is the 3 pieces that I'm doing, which Stravinsky wrote for dance, are kind of seminal works in themselves. That really, it's almost sacrilege to touch them. So I guess that's part of the challenge for myself. Yeah, it's a challenge, really. Yeah.
As the city is somehow less the topic than a kind of a catalyst for us in this marathon and this sort of idea to talk about the city and about London, I was somehow wondering if you could tell us more about the city in your work, and so how somehow the stage or the sacred space of the stage kind of relates to the city, to the pedestrian. And I was particularly interested to which extent someone like Trisha Brown and the way she related to the city, or Trio A, would have been an influence?
Those were, certainly something like Trio A was an influence, but only it was only something that I'd read about. Those notebooks of Yvonne Reyna's were quite influential to me as books, as a book. It was a book of her notebooks, and I'd never actually seen any of the work, but I just found the ideas that she was able to explore in dance were kind of something that I hadn't come across before and hadn't realized were actually possible. I think when I later saw some of her work, much later on, I was surprised by how human it was, because it was all in black and white and in quite serious text. I just didn't realize there would be that much humor and humanness about it. So that was kind of interesting.
Can you maybe tell us more about how...
Was it a disappointment or not? Did you prefer it slightly, maybe?
Oh, maybe initially. Maybe it may have initially been a disappointment, but not for long. No, it made me realize something about the written word and dance and how different they are.
Can you maybe tell us more how in your work, sort of the space of the performance relates to the street, how that sort of negotiation functions in the past, but also now, and if that sort of changed?
Well, I still, personally, I take a great deal of pleasure in street performance, not in a kind of, busking type of way, but I quite like trying things out in normal, everyday situations, but usually for my own amusement. I do. I mean, of course, there's a very different expectation when people have paid to come and see something. But I do. I mean, I still would like to embrace both. Yeah, but this, always a complexity of that. The way things are structured. It's hard to. I would love to take my work to the least suspecting audience. That would be great. Which I think is what you were kind of touching on with some of Trisha Brown's stuff, where it happened on like floating platforms, that sort of thing, or on rooftops. So those works. I think that's what you were referring to.
Yeah. So both and instead of either or would then be the answer. But the question is, I mean, related to that, a lot has been sort of written about not only your kind of Trisha Brown's maybe influence on your work, but also your kind of early dialogue with Merce Cunningham and John Cage. But I was wondering, in terms of memory and about sort of toolboxes from the past, if there have been any kind of things in terms of London or the UK which have been important for you when you, at the beginning of your work, kind of triggers or...
Well, I mean, just going back to what you were saying about the... before I go on to London, the Yvonne Rainer notebooks were a key influence, definitely. Really just because of the sophistication of ideas that could be possible in dance. And that was something that I was never really... Maybe it's not something that you are taught. You find that out. But London, more specifically, what was going on in other fields and other things that interested me outside of my training. And it took me some time to realize that I could actually draw those things, bring those things together. Kerith, who I met, Kerith Van Evans, who I met.
Kerith Van Evans is going to come here in a few hours.
Yeah, who I met when I was 16, was doing something similar through film at that time. And I guess we had similar interests in terms of music and... yeah, I guess there were a few various friends working in different ways, but finding, I guess that's just basic support in each other's work. And we've collaborated together on many different levels. Yeah, and that will continue. I mean, I guess the most obvious thing would be to say that I was studying at the Royal Ballet School in a very rigorous classical way, and at the same time punk was going on. So those two things, you know, I was very focused during the day on my dance training, and that was something that gave me a great deal of satisfaction and pleasure. But also there was this other completely different thing going on, which was very exciting, and it just took me a while to realize that those two things could actually feed one another. But yeah.
And what about Lee Bowery? Can you talk about this? Because you mentioned Kerith Van Evans. There has also been collaboration with Lee Bowery.
Well, I mean, I think that I guess a lot of what was considered serious new dance, I think it might have been called at the time, stripped away any notion of costume. I mean, there's that whole manifesto of Yvonne Rainer saying no to this and no to virtuosity and no to, you know, it was, I don't think she would agree with it herself now, but at the time it was kind of, she was laying down her, you know, this was like her manifesto. It seemed to me that dance was a visual art, and the whole way that, well, the whole way it was presented was kind of pretty important. But also, I was surrounded by people whose only means of expression was how they dressed, and Lee is a very good example of that. I mean, when Lee and I started working together initially, he really simply wanted to make us all look as like him as possible, which was quite a challenge. I mean, that changed over time. I mean, it changed by him becoming a member of my dance company and seeing the work on a daily basis and being physically involved. So he became... his understanding became a much more integrated one, and I think that was reflected in the costumes that he then was designing, for the work.
If I were you, I would kind of think that a moment like that one would be a moment that would never come back again.
Yeah.
Or that a moment of a kind of similar intensity or affinity or mutual kind of reinforcement would never come back again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it will? Or do you live in the expectation that you find similar moments of convergence? Or do you think that was time also something that would happen only in that period?
That was something very special and very unique. But I think something that I certainly learned from that was that for me, my best working relationships are ones that evolve over time. The first time I work with somebody isn't always easy.
The best.
No, it really, and I find that people generally, if I'm collaborating with somebody, they'll generally do their best work if I let them do exactly what they're interested in doing at that moment in time. You know, when somebody's, I mean, part of the reason I was drawn to people with very strong ideas was I hated that idea of a costume designer fulfilling a brief. You know, that just didn't interest me. I mean, Cunningham and Cage had a different approach, similar but different in that they said that they had no interaction between, you know, the design, the music, and the choreography. There was no discussion about maybe they would discuss the length of a piece. Mine has always been, there's been a lot of interaction, but like I say, I've chosen people with very strong ideas of their own who they're not going to do what I tell them. You know.
Quick intervention. It's interesting. You work on Stravinsky, and you know one you can think of like Stravinsky's Paris, and you know all the amazing amounts of kind of high cultural that were around at the time. You know, Picasso and all this kind of stuff at the moment. And then you talked about kind of late Bowery and others, and how they're. I came to London at the exact. I was obviously older than you, but came at the exact same moment as you did, pretty much 75 sort of thing.
Yeah.
And also the kind of punk thing that really struck me again was, you know, people whose mode of expression what was how they dressed. And it seems to be, you know, it's like some kind of popular, almost street design kind of broke through something that was quite fixed and quite kind of not dynamic at all, and just kind of broke through and kind of opened up just so much space. Have you kind of followed up that kind of, I mean, now you've gone back to the classics a little bit, but has that kind of stuff kind of your experience then 75, 76, 77? Yes, right.
I was sort of fascinated by those characters. I was amazed the first time I saw somebody cry because they couldn't get their hair the way they wanted it before they went out. It was kind of a shock to me. I know that Lee spent his entire flight from Australia here in the toilet redoing his hair, which I thought was quite an amazing achievement. But I've never been somebody who's been that personally involved. I guess part of performing, preparing for a performance can be like that. I'm sure it is more for other people. I'm not so much like that, but there are rituals, you know.
But almost as if kind of street life was being performed here.
Yeah.
In a way that, okay, I'm sure it was happening in other places too, but almost as if this kind of the kind of sort of breakthroughs, you know, that later kind of tipped over into visual art and all sorts of other pop music.
Pretty, I mean, I do remember at that time it was pretty straightforward in lots of ways. I mean, if you had your hair shaved off, you basically could get away with not paying your tube fare. It was really that simple that you could just walk through at the other end and not have to pay. But it's not quite like that now. But it meant something different then. Yeah. I'm not being nostalgic.
I have a question which is maybe totally off the wall. When you started, I think bodies were different than they are now. And I think that the discrepancy between an athletic ballet dancer's body and the kind of average body was huge. I think you're now surrounded by kind of, on the whole, more athletic, more beautiful more perfect
That's
bodies.
interesting that you say that. I mean, it depends in what circles you mix.
Yes, I know.
Because on one hand, a lot of people do a lot less with their bodies. Really. Quite a lot of people sit at computers all day. I mean, I think maybe. Well, I'd love the extremes to be getting more. Do you know what I mean? But I can see what you mean. I mean, certainly, just within the field that I work in, it was unusual in the sort of dance that I make. It was unusual when I began making work for somebody to have a recognizable technique. Yeah. That was still strange then. It's not any longer. But I guess there was a period when technique was rejected. Yeah, when more pedestrian movement was being embraced. I mean, I tried to, through working with people like Lee, that was my attempt to, you know, usually people who weren't trained who were in my work were people who I was close to in some way, you know, my mum or Lee, or, you know.
I have a last question. Actually, I wanted to ask you about your yet unbuilt roads, projects which have been unrealized, or too big to be realized, or too difficult, or censored, or dreams.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those.
Can you tell us some? So it would be a book.
No, there is a book. I mean, you kind of, I'm sure everyone has a kind of, you know, you have a kind of, file.
But maybe you can give us the sort of one example of something particularly urgent.
I can't think of one immediately off the top of my head, but there's a book I think I have to put something in. I'll put it in there later.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.